we'll go ahead and go over some of the housekeeping things. One is welcome to the University of Arizona Pre-Health Professions MCAT Workshop live series. My name is Lupe Weatherwart. We have a few of the other pre-health advisors joining us. And a couple of things to ask you. Please mute yourself. I know that I set it up so that you come in muted, but if I can ask you to kindly do that, just so that we keep the background noise to a minimum. Also wanted to let you know if you can please hold on to your questions till the end, and we will answer them at the very end. You can write them in the chat room if you feel like you're gonna forget. That happens to all of us, right? So those are the few things that I wanted to let you know about. And we'll go ahead and get started, unless any of the advisors have any comments, anything they want to say.
Not right now.
Okay, we'll get started because I know that we have an hour and I want to be conscientious of your time. So this workshop, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to talk about what the MCAT is about. What do you need to know about this exam? How long is the test? And when should you take the MCAT? We also want to make sure that you're aware of how you prepare for the MCAT and how do you register for the test. So the MCAT is the medical college admissions test. It's a standardized multiple choice exam. It will examine, assess your problem solving skills, critical thinking skills, and knowledge of natural behavior and social science concepts and principles. So you might be asking, what do I need to know about the MCAT? Well, you should be aware that you can take the MCAT 3 times in 1 year, 4 times over 2 years, and 7 times over a lifetime. The test is used by medical school admissions to see how you think critically under pressure. There are no points deducted for guessing, so take an educated guess. And the national average for matriculants is 511. The total score you can get is 528, which I don't believe too many people get that, so I would say you're okay if you don't get that. The national average for applicants is 504. And I have here a link to a handbook that really talks to you about what you should expect in the MCAT, and it also outlines the different areas that they test you on, very detailed, especially for COVID-19. It's going to give you specific indications and instructions of what to do. So it's an important book to follow with. So again, what does a typical MCAT test day look like? In a regular typical MCAT day, it's going to look like the schedule. I'll cover the COVID-19 schedule in a few minutes towards the end, but I wanted to highlight this, hoping that we get to this soon rather than later. So it's 7.5 hours long, sitting time. It's 6 hours and 15 minutes of actually testing. When you first come in, you'll have to have federal ID with you. They will also check your palms and you'll check in that way every time you come in and out of the center, which means that when you go on break, you have to take your ID with you because you're gonna need it when you come back in. So then, so that's one of the processes that happens in the beginning. There's a tutorial, there's 10 minutes, and there's a lunch. Even though these say optional, I highly recommend that you take the breaks and you take the lunch. It gives you a time to decompress and be able to refocus. So the MCAT tests 4 sections. It has the chemical and physical foundations of biological systems. It has the critical analysis and reasoning. And then you have a lunch break. Then after you come back from your lunch break, you do the biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, and then the psychological, social, and biological foundations. They usually have a survey and a couple of questions that they test in the traditional MCAT again. So For the science sections, they're basically going to want to test your critical thinking skills. They want to know how you think under pressure. They want to know that you can combine an interdisciplinary way of thinking between the different subjects that you're asked to take, which are biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, physics, and some of the social sciences and psychology classes. The critical analysis section is a section that a lot of students struggle with because you're more focused on the science. That section is going to test how you read material, how well you understand, analyze, comprehend, and evaluate and analyze research data that's presented to you, how you can draw conclusions from information that's provided for you. So this is going to have different passages from humanities and social sciences. So I said I was going to cover some of the COVID-19 time. The COVID-19 testing time was reduced to 5 hours and 45 minutes. So basically what they did is they got rid of the additional questions, they got rid of the lunch, and they gave you 3 optional 10-minute breaks. So they also condensed the time. If you can see from the traditional one, you have pretty much 59 questions and about 95 minutes to answer each of the different main categories, except the cars. It's just off by a few minutes and a few questions. For the COVID-19 test, they actually reduced that amount. So they have 48, so they have 76 minutes and 48 questions. For the different sections, and the time for the COVID test is 5 hours and 45 minutes. They also have 3 different times, which is different than the traditional setting because they're more flexible. They traditionally have more test dates and times, and during the COVID, they had to reduce it to 3 different times. The first one was 6:30 a.m., the other one was 12:15 p.m., and then the last one 6 p.m. So if you're not a morning person, I hope you didn't do the 6:30 a.m. because that's not going to be good for your psyche. But those are just things to consider. So we have another section here that kind of gives you another overview and a different way to look at the different components of the MCAT. Here we can see that you have the breakdown of questions. As I mentioned before, you have about 59 questions for each of the different areas. You have 10 passages, and you have 15 standalone questions and 44 passage-based questions. So what does that mean? That means that the 15 standalone questions are knowledge you should already know, things you should have memorized, basic foundational knowledge. The other questions are going to be questions that you're going to use your critical thinking skills. And you're basically going to be giving passages and asked to reason about scientific principles, theories, and concepts. And you're going to be asked to be able to demonstrate and understand scientific research, understand the data that is provided to you, be able to analyze the data, and be able to respond on ethical issues as well that is presented in research, to be able to answer some of the questions that are in the passage-based. So if you're somebody that's good with math, you're probably doing the math right now if you haven't already. What this comes down to in the traditional setting is that you have about 3 minutes to read the passage and about a minute to answer each question, if you wanted to look at it from that perspective. So because I know that some of you might be more visual learners, it's important to kind of provide you the information in this context. So you can see here the number of questions that come from each of the different categories. So you have a few core classes that you're asked to take by medical schools. And they ask you that for this reason. You're going to be tested in the MCAT from these subject matters. For instance, if you can see from this section, the chemical and physical foundations, the majority of the questions are going to come from biochemistry, physics, and general chemistry. So this begs the question, a lot of you sometimes ask pre-health advisors, can I take the MCAT if I don't take biochemistry? Can I take the MCAT if I haven't? And the question is, we would like to say no, just because if you look at this graph, there are going to be a large component of questions that come from that category, and we want you to have the foundation strong enough to be able to do well in the MCAT. And here's another graph for the biological and biochemical foundations. And you can see from this graph, the majority of the questions will come from the biology section, 65%. So you'll see that biochemistry is also represented here, and some general chemistry and organic chemistry. So again, the question is, this kind of gives you the opportunity to kind of already assess where you are with the MCAT. If you feel that you may be, there's some material in biology you already know you need to review, this would be an indication that it is a good idea to review that material because you'll need it for this portion of the MCAT. So here's another way to look at the different categories, the number of questions. But for this particular section, I want to kind of zoom in the critical analysis and reasoning section, because I think that that's one of the sections that students have a hard time doing well in. I'll also give you a couple of resources that you can use that are at your disposal currently. So for instance, the critical analysis and reasoning comes from passages that are from the humanities and social sciences. Sometimes students ask us why they need to take that class, some of those classes, and this is the reason why. You'll need to be familiar with some of the concepts and be able to understand some of those passages. So what do they want to know from this particular section? This section is gonna test you on your critical thinking skills and reasoning skills within text. So you're gonna have Foundations of Comprehension is going to have about 16 questions that are going to come from that area, and they're going to test how well you can read the main idea, how well you can tell, be able to get detail and function from what is the author trying to say, what are they trying to persuade you to do, and possibly ask you, what do they mean based from this information? So they're going to ask you also to infer beyond the text. And that's where you have the second category, the last category. So the reasoning within the text is going to have another 16 questions. And then the reasoning beyond the text is going to have about 21 questions in that category. So a lot of this area here is going to be answering questions and inferring from what they provide for you in the passages. So you can think about it this way. The MCAT is a way to test some of those skills you need for medical schools. When you have a patient come in, you're gonna have this book knowledge. Patient's gonna come in with symptoms. You're gonna try to figure out what body system might be affected, what tests you might need to do, and you're gonna put all of this thing together. So that is kind of what this test, the MCAT, is trying to prepare you for. It's trying to get you to have those skills, sort of thinking in that format early on before you get into medical school. So the next question you might be asking is, okay, so are you taking the core classes? Now, when do I take the MCAT? When is a good time for me to take the MCAT? We get that question asked all the time as free health advisors. One of the things that I would say is, if you can see the calendar here, the tests are not offered. You can see here that it's offered the majority of the months except for October, November, and December. The test is usually comes up, they renew the test in January through September, and you can find a schedule like this, like I have on the screen, that will also have the test dates, and it's also going to have the date that the scores are released, which is very important. So again, the other thing to keep in mind is take the courses that are necessary so that you're prepared, so that you have a strong foundation before you dive in to taking a test like the MCAT. So those are some of the key things to keep in mind. And most students take the MCAT usually the spring semester before they apply to medical school. For some students, if they're on track, that might be your junior year. Usually take it in January so that if they have to plan to retake it again a second time, there's enough time they can take it either sometime in April, March, and sometimes maybe May, but we encourage you to take it in April if you can, so that you can apply that summer of your junior year, maybe in June. We encourage you to apply early. So that's usually what the schedule is like. So think of it as applying the semester before you plan to graduate if you don't want to take a gap year. And then definitely take the MCAT once you completed all the prereqs and all the material that's tested in the MCAT. And most importantly, take it when you are prepared. I can't emphasize that enough. Don't try to take it because your friends are taking it and you feel pressured and rushed. Make sure you take it when you're prepared and you know you're going to do well. It's a 7.5-hour test, and you want to make sure that you spend the 7.5 hours wisely and you do well. So the big question here is, how do I tackle this big MCAT, and what do I need to do so that I can prepare for it? So here's some suggestions that I have for you. One is, you don't have to, but it's highly recommended that if you have the opportunity to take a full mock practice exam. I'll emphasize that again, a mock practice exam. You don't want to waste your chances yet if you're not prepared. This way you can evaluate your results to see where your weaknesses and strengths are, and that's going to help you create a study plan. We recommend that you do that. Your study plan is at least 3 months, if not more if you feel like you need it, depending on how much hours a day you can devote to studying for the MCAT. So your study plan should include interdisciplinary thinking. What does that mean? That means that you're not going to tackle general chemistry 1 week. You are going to spread out the different categories within the day. You might do general chemistry, physics, and a little biochemistry on Monday, and then you switch it up the next day to do some car section, maybe some biology. So this way that your mind is already set from the beginning to start to review and think interdisciplinary between the different subjects. After you do, you create your study plan, you review, you learn, and then you practice. What does that mean? You can buy practice exams, you can do a structured curriculum, or you can just buy one of those books and do the practice exams from there. Then from there, you'll also review your answers. Assess how you did. Did you miss the question because you didn't know the content? Did you miss the question because you misunderstood the question? Or is there a little bit of both? If you don't know, sometimes it's good to kind of talk to maybe a learning specialist, some of your friends. So I'll give you some of the suggestions in a few minutes, but this some of the things that you can put together. And then determine your readiness. Are you ready for the real MCAT? If you don't feel ready, then go back to the first block again, or back to your study plan and redefine your study plan. So again, as I mentioned before, we want you to plan at least 3 months in advance for your study plan. We want you to take a full, I would say take a few full mock length MCATs, also because students have told me that when you study and you're not used to taking a test for 7.5 hours at one sitting. So it's important, kind of like, I mean, I love to run. I've done a few half marathons, and I know that even right now, even though I've done it before, I'm not ready to do one right now. I mean, I can go for maybe 3 or 5 miles, but I need to work at it. It's the same thing with the MCAT. You need to be able to create that momentum so that you're ready for the real thing. And then the other thing too is I want you to look at is assess every time you take a full mock MCAT or you practice, assess how you're doing and create a different study plan if you have to. Adjust your study plan. Don't be afraid to adjust your study plan to accommodate some of the things that you need to review. And then finally, you don't need to know each of the subject matters to the depth that you would when you're taking a final exam. So just keep that in mind. You do need to know enough information, but not at that level. The other thing to consider is assess how you perform best. What do I mean by that? That means, do you study better by yourself? Can you create enough structure for an MCAT to do it yourself? Do you learn by studying in a group? Maybe you can gather a few of your friends to do a few study groups every once in a while. Is just anxiety your enemy? That is the number one thing that I've heard from students. And I'll share a story in a few minutes about a student that I just talked to last week who ended up getting a panic attack the first time she took the MCAT. And so she realized, and she told me, she says, you know, one of the things that I would tell students is prepare emotionally for the test. Because, and that goes, you know, don't take that lightly. And the other thing too is a lot of you are too hard on yourself. This is not the end all exam. It's just one step of everything else you evaluated for to get into medical school. So don't be too hard on yourself, and don't let anxiety get to you like that did with that one student. She actually got a panic attack because the negative self-talk was so high that she couldn't focus. She was shaking. So she had to walk out middle of the MCAT and just kind of void her test. It was a happy ending. She came back after 2 weeks, worked herself up, and came back and took the test, and she got a 517. Amazing score. So it wasn't that she was underprepared. It was this that mentally she let her anxiety get the best of her. So if you need to work on that, I would say work on that. Get the positive self-talk early on from the beginning, from the first day one that you start studying for the MCAT. Practice that positive self-talk. So just wanted to give you that story so that you kind of have that. I know that a lot of you are probably in that same situation. And then the other thing too is set up your environment towards the end to kind of mimic the environment you might have at the regular MCAT. So if you can't chew gum at the MCAT, if you can't, you know, wear your pajamas at the MCAT, maybe you want to wear your pajamas, I don't know. Make sure that you prepare that environment so that you are pretending that you're there mentally from the beginning. This way you kind of know what you're up against and you can be okay with that environment. And then the other thing too is to consider set goals. Sleep well from the beginning when you start studying, eat well, you know, and make sure that you exercise and take breaks in between your studying. Do not try to do this crammed. Take some breaks. Enjoy your, you know, have that balance in your life. Enjoy your family and do things that make you excited and happy about life. Just to put yourself back into perspective of this is just one component of your life. It's not your entire life. So some of the comment, and the other thing too is gather resources. I'll give you a few in a few minutes. And I did mention I was gonna give you the cards. I'll mention that at the end. If I forget, remind me. The other thing too is common mistakes that students do is that they try to take the MCAT without taking the prereqs, thinking that if I don't take physics and biochemistry, I can teach myself and do well. I've rarely seen that happen, so I would suggest you just take the courses and prepare to take the MCAT after you've taken the courses. The other thing too is maybe not having enough resources, having not taken enough practice exams, maybe never taking a full mock MCAT, and then you get there the day off and you realize that your brain starts to shut off after the 4th hour and you still have a few more hours to go. So you never build up the stamina. So that's another thing too. And then the last one common mistake that students make is, as I mentioned earlier, taking it too soon. And the other thing too is, one thing I would like to let you know is when you take the MCAT the first time, don't pay attention to your score. It's your first time. You're trying to adjust to the timing. You're trying to adjust to this format of this test. Don't be too hard on yourself. Just work on building your momentum and just keep that positive talk. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and go to some of the resources. So through the AAMC is where you can get some practice exams. Some of them are free and some of them you have to pay for. If you can afford to pay for them, I would say great. If you can't, definitely take advantage of the free stuff. They do have a full test that they're going to release, and I believe it has about 290 some questions. They released it October 1st. That's available. They also released a cars section that you can get for free through the AAMC website. And they also have other study material. They have other resources listed on their website. You can do Khan Academy, but I believe that they're shutting down their resources. Not sure exactly when, but they have other resources there as well. I have listed here the free resources, so you can go there and download them. There is a class you can take for the car section, and I might put it in the section at the bottom in the chat room, or email it to you guys later. There's a class you can take that will prepare you for the car section. The other thing too is Think Tank has an MCAT prep course. And then there's other private prep courses out there, Kaplan, Princeton. I would ask some of your fellow classmates to give you some tips and to see what they thought about that. If you feel you don't have the structure and the capacity to put the structure in your study plan, sometimes these other resources might be worth the cost, or maybe something you can talk to friends to see if they can share some of the resources. Sometimes students do that as well. The other place I want to share with is the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Health Sciences oftentimes does some of these MCAT prep workshops where they actually give you strategies for these different sections. They also have resources that they can provide for you. I provided the link here for their website. I would contact them. They do have a learning specialist that works with the students that work in their area that can help with the study plan. Put together a study plan for you if that's something you're struggling with. So here are just some of the resources. And then the other question that students might be asking is, okay, I think I have it down. I think I know what I need to do. How do I register for the MCAT when it comes down to getting ready for it? You would go again to the American Association of Medical Colleges website, the AAMC, and register for the MCAT. You do have to pay when you register. It's about $320 when I checked. It's a one-time fee. There are different fees depending on how close you register to the deadline or the date of the exam. There might be some penalty fees you might have to pay if you registered late, so just be aware of that. There is a fee assistance waiver that you can apply for. So if you feel that you qualify, if you possibly get the Pell Grant and you get financial aid, I would say you might want to look at that first before you register. Because if you receive it and you've already paid for it, I don't believe you'll get your money back. So you want to make sure that you do that first. And then I'm not sure if he's here, but I'm gonna go ahead. So I wanted you to have some ideas and maybe some feedback from some of the students that currently have taken it. I know that we have our pre-health ambassadors, and we have a student that has been kind enough to go to talk to you about his experience. And then I have a quote here from the student that I was referencing earlier with the story about the fact that she had a panic attack, and she had to walk out of there and void her exam, and then came back and bounced back. This is kind of a quote she provided and wanted me to share that with you, and is also willing to talk to you if you're interested. I'll leave her email with pre-health advisors so that if any of you have questions, we can share that with you. So if Kobe's here, I'll go ahead and ask him some of the questions. And if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, guys, I'm Kobe. I took the MCAT around June 5th, so it was the COVID MCAT. And then Lupe, you said you had questions for me?
Yes, I do. So the first question is, how did you prepare? Did you self-study? Did you do group study? And why did you choose the method that you used?
So in terms of studying, I self-studied. Mostly I just did practice exams. I took one of the mock MCATs last spring, I believe, with the pre-health advising office, and that was kind of like a wake-up call. And so when I saw my score, I decided to, crank up the studying right off the bat ever since then. And then I kind of just like self-studied. I got some Kaplan books. I kind of used it as a reinforcer. I didn't read all like 500 pages. I know that's like kind of impossible to do. I mean, if you can, that's great. But like I use it as a reinforcer. I took as many practice exams as I can. Again, like what Lupe was saying, you got to build that momentum. The exam, it's pretty hefty taking it, and so you got to make sure you're comfortable sitting down for 7.5 hours. And then, yeah, I took a bunch of practice exams, especially the double AMC ones. I think those are pretty representative of what you would get on exam day. There's other resources such as Kaplan. They have some practice exams. And also, I don't know if you guys heard, but I'll go ahead and type it up in the chat. There's this program called UWorld where they have practice exam questions and things for you guys to kind of use as practice. I know I definitely used UWorld leading up to my exam to kind of test my knowledge, and they have great explanations for every question. So I definitely recommend you guys kind of investing in UWorld. I think it's a great investment along with the double AMC. And then me personally, I love self-studying. I had some study groups here and there, but we didn't really make it like as often as we would self-studying, because I feel like on the exam, you're pretty much by yourself. So you got to get used to, like, being by yourself, knowing your limits, your weaknesses, stuff like that, and getting to know yourself throughout the study process. I think that's very important. So yeah.
Thank you. And how many times did you take the MCAT?
I took it once. My first time was actually this June. And it was the COVID version, and it was, yeah, it went pretty well. So yeah.
Did they give you a time, or did you get a chance to select the time?
It was randomized for me. When they said they were gonna assign times, I didn't really have a choice. I was assigned the 6:30 a.m. one. And so me personally, I'm a morning person, so it wasn't really that bad for me, but other of my friends got like the 6 p.m. one and the 12 p.m. one. But I do believe they give you an option to reschedule your time. I don't know because I didn't try it, but I think I heard someone say that they were able to reschedule their time if it wouldn't work for them. But yeah.
And let me ask you this: would you do anything different?
I definitely would probably do more practice exams and practice questions. Yeah, just a lot of practice questions for sure. Maybe watch more of the Khan Academy videos. I know that they're actually gonna get rid of those videos next September. So I highly, highly, highly recommend watching those videos. It's a free service, and then I usually watch those like if I get a question wrong on one of my practice exams and then I know like the concept, I search it up on Khan Academy and I watch it, and they explain it really, really well. And then I am able, once like a concept comes back to me in a future practice exam, like those Khan Academy videos really, really help. So I definitely recommend watching those before they get rid of them next year in September, I believe. So yeah.
Thank you. Any other advice that you would like to give some of the people watching this right now?
Lupe, you kind of tackled it already, but like take it when you're ready. Don't rush it. Make sure you find time to hang out with friends, de-stress. Again, the MCAT's not your life. You gotta find time to like live life and not let the MCAT consume you, because like it is a pretty stressful like period during like the dedicated study time, and so you gotta find time to spend time with family, learn how to de-stress, and then always try your best. And then on exam day, don't freak out. You did what you can. You studied as much as you can, and you just got to go in with a positive mindset, knowing that you're going to go in, show them what you know, and then come out with a smile on your face. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kobe. So I don't know if you did some of this, but I know that Angelica shared with me her calendar. She also used the Kaplan books, and she color-coded it because they're different subject areas. And you can see that she even had, she gave me a couple other ones where they actually have, a break day or, off day. It sounds like you did some of that as well.
Yeah,
Thank you
for
so
sure.
much,
Break
Kobe.
days are, yeah, you're welcome.
Are there any other students? I know that I'll open up to some of the ambassadors, the pre-health ambassadors. If any of you want to share any of your information, any advice? You were the brave, Kobe. Thank you so much.
Thank
And we'll go ahead and tackle some of the, so this is some of the sources that I used. Again, some of the material here gives you some ideas of the different breakdown of the different categories and what's in the different sections, exactly what they're testing you on. And then finally, I'll open it up to any questions that anyone might have, or if somebody, if questions came up in the chat room, I'll do my best to answer them. I'm not the expert in the MCAT, but I'll try my best.
It looks like someone asked, is this by month after Kobe typed UWorld? So I'm not sure if they meant if it's a subscription by month, or I don't know if the person wants to clarify their question.
I think I know what they mean. Yeah, it's by subscription. So like for like 3 months, it's like a certain price, or like for a year, it's a certain price. And like, of course, the longer you have, the more expensive it will be. I got the 3-month subscription 3 months before my exam date, and I kind of just used that leading up to the exam to kind of build my momentum. So yeah.
All right, thank you. So it's all right. So what precautions are being taken during the exam while in the time of COVID?
I think Kobe could answer that one because he had to do that one.
You gotta wear a mask for sure. I know when they're checking, like before you enter the exam room, they check under your mask, because like I know that for one of the first COVID exams that they gave like back in May, some people had like equation sheets under their masks, and then, like yeah, they're gonna check under your mask, but of course everyone's wearing masks. The only time you take it off is when you take your photo ID, and then for them to kind of check under your mask to see if you have anything under there. But yeah, they definitely sanitize the computers and keyboards and mouse pads and stuff like that, and the desk before every exam. They have hand sanitizers. Yeah, and yeah, I think, yeah, they're pretty safe. They have, in the waiting room, our chairs are pretty spread out by 6 feet. So it's pretty safe so far. So yeah.
Thank you, Kobe. Any other questions? Remember, when you're typing in chat, sometimes we can see what you're typing. So just be careful what you're typing. Next question, is the exam online exam or written?
The exam is online. I don't believe they have the written. They do provide modifications if you need them. You have to request those ahead of time. That manual that I referred to earlier in the presentation gives you all the different indications that you may need, different accommodations you may need. There's people you can refer to or talk to if you need certain accommodations.
And they're asking, can you have paper?
You can't bring any paper to the testing site, but they do give you scratch paper for sure.
And someone wants to know, kind of a personal question, but it says, how much did you end up spending on prep material? So that's up to you if you want to answer it. You don't have to, or just give a ballpark.
Well, actually, I actually know this person, so I'll probably just
okay.
message him. But it really depends on what your budget is. Again, AAMC, I definitely recommend investing in that at least, because they have great practice exams that are representative of what you're going to get on the exam. So if anything, try to invest into AAMC's practice materials for sure. But if you feel like you want to, get other third-party practice materials, feel free as long as you're able to do that. But yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kobe. Next question. What would you suggest to a non-traditional student who has done well in their prereq science courses, but has not taken these prereqs for several years?
For that question, I think similar to the student, and I didn't mention that, students that get AP credit for some of these sciences is one of the reasons too that possibly medical schools don't accept that credit, because they realize that you don't have the foundation knowledge. Maybe by the time you take the MCAT, it's been a couple of years possibly, and you really need the materials. I mentioned in some of the categories, the percentage of questions that come from those different areas is pretty significant, especially biology. That's one of the AP credits that we get. So for that non-traditional student, unfortunately, what I've heard from some students that I talk to that are non-traditional, and Josie can attest to that as well, possibly, is that they, even though it's a pain to retake those tests, those classes, it's beneficial because it brings back that foundational knowledge that they need for the MCAT, and it makes them feel more confident going into applying for medical school, knowing that they refreshed some of that material.
And excuse me. So also I want to chime in on this one too, because, you know, each student is different when they take the MCAT. So if it has been a while and you're a non-traditional student, you hadn't had those courses in a while, is it some way, somehow you should be able to review the material so that you can be prepared to take the MCAT. The disadvantage of retaking courses is that you know they're going to look at every grade, every course. So if you took all the intro courses and then you repeated every one of them, there's another way to review for the material, and you don't necessarily, I would suggest, you know, retaking those courses, but you probably want to come in and talk to a pre-health advisor so that we can talk about that and brainstorm about it. But again, remember that if you retake a course, they're going to calculate a GPA based on every course, every grade that you've taken. So some way, somehow, if it was a while that you took the courses, some way you should be able to review that material, that you don't retake the courses, but at least you prepare for the MCAT.
All right, thank you. All right, next question. How long did you study before you took the test?
I studied, I guess, 6 months before. So if I took it in June, I'm pretty sure I started in January, and I took a mock MCAT in February. And so after that, that's when I started cranking it up. I think during the period where it's like I was just taking practice exams and questions like every 2 days was probably 4 weeks leading up to the exam, so about a month, to kind of just help build my momentum. So I think that's where it was mostly very like MCAT focused. And after finals last semester, that's when I kind of just like focused on practice exams and practice questions. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Is how much time did you spend on each section of the books, and which sections should we focus on more? Again, I will say this is more personal because, you know, we always talk to students, if you just took biochem, you might not focus a whole lot on biochem, but if you took general chemistry 3 years ago, that may be where you focus. So I don't know if you want to answer the question, Kobe, or just from your experience, you know, did you focus kind of equally on them, or were for you, I guess, again, personally, I'm assuming some sections were maybe easier for you because you might have taken the course more recently?
Yeah, so it really depends on where you're at and what courses you've taken, like during your exam semester or like before your exam. Me personally, since I'm a physio major, and a lot of physio majors can say the same, we do pretty well on section 3, so like the biology, biochemistry section. So I didn't really focus a lot on that. Me personally, like I focused more on the soc portion, which is the section 4 part, because like psychology isn't really like my forte, and so I kind of focus on that a lot. Same with cars too. I focus on cars a lot because it is probably my most difficult section, like looking back at it. Yeah, and then to kind of answer the next question, how did I prepare for cars? The car section, it really depends on who you are. If you were like a bookworm when you were a kid and you were reading a lot growing up, then I feel like the car section is probably going to be okay for you. But for the most part, the car section, I feel like you just gotta do a lot of practice exams and questions on cars. That's what a lot of my friends did. The only way to kind of improve your car score is to just keep doing practice questions, keep reading passages and practice answering questions from passages. That way you can kind of build your own momentum, build your own strategy, because everyone has their own strategies for cars. But yeah, just having that, building that momentum with practice for cars, I think is the best way to go with it.
And I'll put a little plug in here for those students that are sophomores or haven't finished their gen ed. In Tier 2 INDV, there's actually a course that covers the car section of the MCAT, and it's Care Health Society 202. So if you took that course, it's a gen ed requirement, and it specifically says it covers the car section of the MCAT. So hey, knock that off, gen ed, and you can have a class that help you with cars.
All right. So you responded to how long you took to prepare for cars. I guess this was an important one. How did you balance studying for the MCAT and then managing your current coursework? So in other words, how did you balance school and studying for the MCAT?
I guess during the semester on the weekdays, I know I have like a lot of stuff with like classes and like assignments and stuff like that. So I kind of just did like small reviews every Monday through Friday, on certain like concepts and like subjects that I'm like struggling on. And then when it comes to the weekend, I usually dedicate a Sunday to a practice exam, and then have like that Sunday to take it, and then have the rest of the week to kind of review the problems or like the questions that I got wrong, and then use like maybe like Saturday to like do content review, and then that same Sunday take another practice exam or like another set of practice questions to kind of, you know, solidify some things. So yeah, I definitely like dedicated most of the weekends to MCATs because I know like my grades are also important too. So I definitely focus on my grades for sure. And so, yeah, I think if you have a free day, like say if you have no class on Thursdays, then I definitely recommend dedicating Thursdays to either a big practice exam or a dedicated content review day. So, yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure you also found some time, as Luba mentioned, to sort of put the books away, have a relaxing day either with your friends or watching TV, binge watching something to make sure that you kind of, you take because rest is important, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely take some rest days. Take time to like, spend time with family and friends for sure. I think that's very important during your dedicated study period.
Thank you. And this one I think is for advisors. Is how long is the score valid for?
I believe it's valid for 3 years.
All right, thank you. We got the course. What's the general environment of the test? So how casually am I allowed to dress, and can we have snacks, water bottles with us?
I don't think they're gonna kick you out if you're not dressed in a way. I think definitely dress the way you take your practice exams. For example, like I usually don't like wearing jeans during practice exams, but I force myself to wear jeans, and because that's what I plan on wearing for exam day. So probably dress like as if you were to go to class, or like take any like exam, or like as if you were going to school on campus. I definitely recommend dressing like that. I don't think they're gonna kick you out if you're in sweats or leggings or any of that. But if you feel comfortable testing in that, then by all means, feel free to dress like that for sure. And then for the snacks and water bottles, yeah, you got to bring snacks and water for sure. I don't know how you can do it without those, but you're given like a locker and you're supposed to put your stuff in it. And then the only time you can access that locker is during your breaks. And that's when you can have your snacks and drink some water. But yeah.
And I guess I would say, if you're a person who gets cold easily, probably take a sweater or something. Mm-hmm. The last thing you want to do is focus on how cold you are during the test and your hands are frozen or something. So, just rule of thumb, I think for anything that you go to, take a sweater if it's a room you're not familiar with, so that you're not cold. Let's see.
The other thing I want to add to that is you can choose a location for most part, except for COVID-19, it got a little crazy. So make sure you choose a place that you're familiar with. We've had students that kind of wait till the last minute and end up driving to a different state to take the MCAT, and then they don't even know the campus, and they're just even more stress added to it. So take that into consideration when you reserve your spot.
And we have a great story from one of our previous pre-health advisors, is that there was only one spot left and it was in Guam. They flew out to Guam to take the MCAT and they fill up fast. So if you select a date, don't waste the time, get there and get that, reserved date, because they do fill up really fast. And as you saw, I think Ethan posted, they will be opening up those spots for January, November. I forget what the date, but it was in the chat that those dates will be opening up for the next cycle.
Thank you. So next question is, it is more of a personal question. My guess is they're asking about your course load and units. My guess is you were at least a full-time student both semesters, the semesters leading up and the semester that you took the exam, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I would say for students who are, as Kobe is a physio student or any type of science course or science major, you'll probably have pretty intense semesters anyways. Not to say that other majors don't, but remember, it's the balance, right? It's balancing. If you know you're going to have a semester where you're going to be studying for the MCAT, that's where you balance out your schedule a little bit and figure out, okay, which courses should I take? Which courses could wait a little bit? Maybe you sacrifice and you go, you know what? Maybe I take summer class and take this course so that I have next semester sort of a little lighter to study for the MCAT. Maybe it's a winter session. I know a lot of students like to take biochem 384 or 385 during winter. Mm-hmm. So again, it's sometimes planning ahead and maybe even making that sacrifice of, oh, I was going to go on vacation this summer, but I should probably stay home and, do physics or something so that I can be ready next semester to study for the MCAT. So again, it's kind of the theme of the whole workshop, right? Finding the balance and finding what works best for you.
And typically it's like a 3-credit course. You're investing that amount of time to really study for it. It's like taking a 3-credit course. So yeah, be aware of what you're taking that semester, when you're taking it, and what things to be aware of. Because I know a lot of students express they want to take it in March or April, and you're smack in the middle of the semester and things happen. And I know a lot of students have told us, I wish I would have waited. I didn't need to take it that soon. I could have taken it in May, could have taken it in June for that application cycle. Because sometimes you want to take it when you're best prepared and not sidetracked by something else, a project or your classes that happen during midterms. So, think about when you want to take it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's evaluating even, as Josie said, if you're trying to take it at some point and you realize you have to take it later, that might change your schedule for applying as well. And so it's about really sitting down and thinking those through, coming and talking to us and saying, hey, what do you like? You can ask us what we think. It's obviously up to you, but talking about your plan, talk over the plan with us and say, what if I move this here? What if I did this later? What if I apply later? So you have resources available for you. Make use of them. We have pre-health ambassadors such as Kobe, who can maybe sit with you and email us and say, hey, could I meet with a pre-health ambassador who's gone through this? Maybe you can share, they can share this information with you or kind of what they went through. Next question, are the MCATs held on college campuses?
No, they're off-site and private.
Okay. What month does the application cycle end?
Depends when you apply. So right now, the students that are getting ready to try to matriculate into med school and trying to get in for 2022. So this is a time, this is kind of like the beginning of that cycle, but we're still working with students who applied last year who may not have gotten in and they're reapplicants and they might be retaking the MCAT. I think the bottom line, and here's my plug for the pre-health professions office, come see us so we can talk about it. Your situation is so uniquely different. Let's develop a timeline for what you want to do and when you want to get in. But right now, the workshops we're doing are preparing those students who are applying to get in for 2022. It's a 1-year process. And so you want to make sure you have all your letters and everything else. We're doing a series, so not only the MCAT, but we did an interviewing techniques workshop. We'll be doing a personal statement workshop. So definitely stay tuned with us. But it really depends when you want to matriculate into med school, when you start that process.
All right, any last questions from the audience? All right.
No.
Doesn't sound like it.
All right. Well, perfect. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much. I do have a resource from Kaplan. I'll try to send it out to all the students that were here today. It's kind of a resource that gives you some tips and information about the different sections, the key points you should know. So I'll send that out to everyone.
Great. And thank you, Lupe,
right,
for presenting.
Thank you, Lupe. And thank you, Kobe.
Thanks, Kobe.
You were great.
Have a good evening, everybody.
And